Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. What's the stupidest thing you've had to explain to a coworker? I used to work in a toy store and one day I was just in the back office when a rather thick colleague ran in. Quick, do you have a calculator? I looked in a few drawers before saying no, but thought I could perhaps work out the calculation in my head. What do you need a calculator for? You know, the till should. I need to work out a discount. Oh, okay. What's the discount? 50%. I laugh. That's just half price then. Giving her the benefit of the doubt, I then ask, 50% of what? Expecting her to say something like 47.63 pounds or something. 50% of 2 pounds. Well, that's just 1 pound. Is that 1 pound off or the new price? Are you serious? It's the same. She looks at me and clearly doesn't believe me. A moment later, she politely asks if I'm sure we don't have a calculator. At this point, I find one and hand it to her and get ready to leave. However, she takes it and presses a few buttons only to then ask, "How do you work it out on a calculator?" I quickly take the calculator away from her, press the one key, and hand it back. There you go, it's worked out the answer. The new price is 1 pound. At this point, she smiled, thanked me, and left content with her newly discovered knowledge. A 70-something-year-old coworker of mine has been manually typing out the same confirmation email, about 3 paragraphs, for at least the last 10 years. I had to show her how to copy and paste because none of the other morons in my office ever thought about helping her. Worked in childcare. Had to explain to a coworker that if you suspect a child is being abused at home, you're legally obligated to report it. He was just like, nah, I don't really want to get involved. If I don't report it, no one will know. Yeah, that's the effing problem. I seriously had to explain misconduct to a coworker. I was 18 at the time and managed the file room for a decently large car dealership in the rich part of Central Florida. I basically just sorted and filed repair order paperwork and retrieved files when needed. I was given a 17-year-old underling, let's call him Alex, which was awesome, but it was soon found out that he was a moron who couldn't keep 6-digit numbers in numerical order. Your guess how is as good as mine. So we threw him to the car lot. His job was the simplest thing ever. If a customer drove to the repair lot, he would greet them until a repair manager assisted them, then Alex would drive their car into the garage and leave it there for the mechanics. If new cars were brought to the lot for our sales department, he drove them to the sales lot. That's literally it. Anyways, about a week into his time as our lot boy, 2 women in their early 20s pulled in for a scheduled oil change they had an appointment for. I ask you not, this is word for word how he greeted them. "Good morning, you lovely ladies. I have to let you know that we just implemented a new policy that all beautiful women must give me their numbers." Next thing you know, the dumb A is sitting in my office being to me about how prudish the managers are and how he was about to score. I have never seen a mightier S-storm at any of my workplaces since that day. I stayed out of the aftermath. Manager talked them down. Alex somehow kept his job. I have no idea how it was resolved like that. Not a coworker, but a teammate on my rowing boat. We have some pretty funky weather around here, and one week we showed up to the lake to find the water level had gone down 3 meters. When we first saw it, he stood there looking at it for a while silently, and looked like he was thinking, which was unusual for him. We grabbed the boat, and as we were carrying it to the water, he asked, "So, since the water's lower, will that make us faster or slower?" I was so confused and shocked that I just said, "I'm not sure. I wouldn't have thought it'd be noticeable." I wasn't really sure what else to say without straight up calling him an idiot. But then he hit me with the brilliant, "Will the boat sit higher or lower in the water?" I kind of gave up after that. That Chinese people are technically Asian. He tried to tell me that Chinese people aren't Asian, and if you called a Chinese person Asian, they'd get offended. I countered with, China is the largest country in Asia. So he went and got another coworker who agreed with him, and they basically both called me stupid for not knowing something that isn't true. My job involves a lot of filing. I work with these two women who insist that you file alphabetically by general articles, conjunctions, and prepositions. No, GD, if the name of the business is the blah, you file it under B for blah, for goodness sake, not T for the. The worst part is these women are so catty and condescending that I couldn't even approach them in a professional manner to point out this error to them. There is no arguing with them. They know best. But in the meantime, I will continue to file them the way they are supposed to be filed, and if they can't find them, well, that sounds like a personal problem. A woman at work was complaining that the scanner she was using wouldn't read a barcode. I looked over at what she was doing and said, you have to hold it far enough away that the laser is wider than the barcode. She did, and then claimed no one has ever told her that. She worked here for years, and scanning paperwork is something that's done multiple times per hour. She's not bright. Worked in an area known for bad commuter traffic. Coworker was convinced that if she stayed late in the office and left after traffic cleared up, she would get home sooner than if she left at 5 p.m. Arguments took place for weeks. I couldn't get her to understand that she would spend less time in the car but still get home later than if she left at 5. Most frustrating experience of my life, made worse because she made fun of me for not understanding such a simple concept. If she doesn't put her hours in the payroll system by the deadline, she won't get paid on time. For people who keep worrying if my pain in the A employee is getting paid on time, I am literally the lowest rung in the management hierarchy at my work, and I control none of this stuff. The payroll is due on the 15th. I log in to approve her hours on the 16th and text her because she hasn't entered anything. She says, oh, I can do it later. Then the end of the weekday rolls around and she hasn't done it. I text her again and she says, I'll do it after dinner, which means I have to stop my evening to log in to see if she has done it. Of course, she hasn't. So I text her again, telling her that the person who cuts the checks is going to start emailing me in the morning and I need to have her S approved by 9 a.m. 9 a.m. rolls around and her dumb A hasn't done S. So I get an email with a bunch of exclamation points before I even get into the office for the day. So I again have to text her and tell her to do her stupid S. She is getting paid on time, but it's at the extreme inconvenience for everyone else. That the 5-second rule was a joke in that it's not anything to start a mass panic over. So this particular incident started stupidly and just got worse from there. In fact, I'm pretty sure this is the stupidest thing I've ever witnessed. A few days before Thanksgiving, one of the older women on my floor started running around the floor excitedly warning everyone that a new study shows the 5-second rule no longer applies. She actually was going from cube to cube, making sure to notify each and every person. I'm guessing she felt some urgency because a holiday potluck was about to begin, but I have no idea. Most people were pretty perplexed by her concern, but a few people started to look a bit scared. She only made through a couple rows of cubicles before people started to walk over so they could figure out what was going on. Things were still manageable at this point. Several people asked her to clarify why she was so riled up. Her answers was something like, people need to be careful, it's not healthy anymore, as well as a few similarly vague statements. A couple other people had no idea what the 5-second rule is and tried to get her to explain it. She just said, you know, like it used to be okay as long as you didn't wait more than 5 seconds, but now it's not. That didn't help clarify the concept for any of that day's 10,000 since she insisted on coyly avoiding the phrase, picking up food that was dropped on the floor and eating it. At this point, a small crowd was gathered around this woman and was spilling over into my cube. There were several people still trying to figure out whatever terrible news this woman was trying to convey, but several more were just staring at her with a mix of shock, confusion, and disgust. A few brave souls were asking questions, trying to clarify if she was so concerned because she had regularly been eating discarded food off the floor prior to this. Unfortunately, she had whipped herself into a panic by this point and wasn't really answering anyone's questions. She just kept repeating, "It's not safe anymore," regardless of what was being asked. This somehow set off a bit of a chain reaction. Seriously, it was like stupidity and panic had become an airborne virus, one with about a 5-second incubation period. First, the crowd grew large enough that the newcomers couldn't really see or hear what was happening because everyone is talking, maybe 40 or so people wedged between a row of cubicles. Then one girl, who was still in the dark about the whole 5-second rule concept, grabbed a phone and called her mother on the phone to ask about the news, and not bothering to mention the 5-second rule until several minutes into the call. The 5-second rule lady seemed to be having a mild panic attack for some reason. Then I started hearing people on the outer edge of the crowd asking each other if there was some breaking news and why they weren't safe anymore. Someone loudly announced, "I'm freaked out, I'm going home!" A couple other people grabbed their stuff and left too. People on the opposite side of the floor were starting to gather in small groups and looked in the crowd's direction. A couple of those people decided to leave the building, but could have just been taking an early lunch for all I know. At that point, things got silly. One of the girls in the center of the crowd looked up and suddenly noticed the commotion. She then got panicked and started asking things like, "What's going on?" and "Oh my god, everyone's leaving, do we need to go?" Now, I should mention that she was actually one of the first people to come over to the 5-second rule lady, so should have known better than anyone what was going on. And of course, only a handful of people had left at that point. Regardless, her and a few other people in the center of the crowd decided that something had happened and promptly started pushing through the crowd for some reason. This prompted about a dozen people to head towards the nearest exit door. I continued to run my daily reports. The max exodus finally alerted a manager who seemed rather startled by the scene after he walked out of his office. He promptly and rather loudly placed a call to security. Then he stood on a desk, shouted at everyone to calm down, and asked for an explanation. No one volunteered one, so he started pulling individuals aside and asking them what was going on and what they were doing. He got 4 or 5 versions of "I don't know" before I decided to get up and try to explain the situation. I had to fill out a report on the incident a few days later. It was a good 5 pages long. The security guards got a good laugh out of the whole thing. Oh, and a footnote, there's a few tidbits I learned about the 5-second rule lady after the fact. Yes, I'm a masochist and actually decided to broach the subject with her again right after everyone had calmed down a bit. 1. She apparently doesn't understand science. She thinks that scientific research somehow creates reality rather than studies it. So she thought that scientists had made it where the 5-second rule didn't work anymore. 2, and probably obviously at this point, she didn't realize that the 5-second rule was intended to be a joke. When explaining this concept, I think I actually used the phrase "because no one in their right mind would want to eat food after it had fallen on the floor." The woman who sat next to her also had the same misunderstanding, which was pretty concerning, was pretty peeved at me for claiming that bacteria don't wait for a 5-second count, and insisted that her family had been using the 5-second rule for years. 3. She gets nervous when other people are nervous, which apparently is why she started repeating "it's not safe" over and over again. So she quickly created her own feedback loop. And finally, the study in question that started this whole thing was just some random piece of news that had appeared on her Facebook feed. And as an aside, we work at a Fortune 500 company. I'm not quite sure what this woman does, but it is something in finance or accounting. So yeah. Thank you for watching. Guys, thank you for all the support and the likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.